I found my wife's secret wedding registry under a completely different name. It sounds crazy, I know, like something out of a bad Lifetime movie, right? But it's not. This is real, and it's my life. And hey, before I dive into this whole messed up story, if you're finding yourself drawn into this, wanting to know what happens next, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, give this a like, share it with anyone you think might get hooked, and definitely drop a comment below. I'm telling this to a bunch of strangers because, honestly, I don't know who else I can tell. I need to get it out, and maybe, just maybe, hearing it from me will resonate. So yeah, subscribe, like, share, comment. It helps more than you know. It started, as these things so often do, with something mundane. A Tuesday. Rain lashing against the windows of our little ranch house in the suburbs of Chicago. Sarah, my wife, was out. Said she had a late meeting with her book club, except her book club was usually on Thursdays. I didn't think much of it at the time. She'd been stressed about work, about the house, about everything lately. The kind of stress that makes you forget what day of the week it is. I was sprawled on the couch, flipping through channels, the drone of the TV a familiar soundtrack to my evening. Then, a notification popped up on my laptop. It was from a shared account we had, some old generic email address we used for online shopping back when we first got married. It was an alert for a purchase, something I hadn't ordered. A small thing, a set of antique silver spoons. Sarah's mom loved antiques. I figured Sarah had bought them as a surprise gift for her. That made sense. But the confirmation email was addressed to Elizabeth Vesper. Elizabeth Vesper. That wasn't Sarah. Sarah's maiden name was Miller. Elizabeth Vesper sounded elegant, almost foreign. Definitely not my wife. A little jolt, a tiny prickle of unease, but nothing substantial. I dismissed it. Maybe a mistake. Maybe it was a gift to her mom and she'd used a different name for some reason. Old email accounts can get weirdly mislabeled. I was tired. My brain was foggy. I was about to close the laptop when another notification pinged. This one was from a different site, a bridal boutique. Again, a purchase, a ridiculously expensive crystal champagne flute set, and again addressed to Elizabeth Vesper. That's when the prickle turned into something colder, a knot tightening in my stomach. Champagne flutes? Bridal boutique? Elizabeth Vesper? Sarah Miller. My wife of 7 years, the woman I shared my life with, my bed with, my dreams with, the woman I thought I knew inside and out. It didn't add up. I started digging. It felt wrong, like I was violating some unspoken trust, but the unease was a physical thing now, churning in my gut, making it hard to breathe. I opened the shared email again and searched for Elizabeth Vesper. Nothing. Just the 2 purchase confirmations. Then I did something I'm not proud of. I went into Sarah's laptop. It was locked, of course, but I knew her password. A stupid, sentimental password related to our anniversary. She always said it was too obvious. I guess she was right. I found a folder tucked away in her documents that was strangely named, something innocuous like project files. Inside, there were a few subfolders: budget, vendors, guest list. And then I saw it, a document titled Our Big Day, E and J. My heart hammered against my ribs. I clicked on it. It opened up to a spreadsheet, a wedding registry. Not our wedding registry. Ours was years ago, a sensible collection of towels and kitchen gadgets. This was different. This was lavish. Crystal chandeliers, a custom-made cake topper, a honeymoon package to the Maldives. And then the names. Groomsman, Jonathan Sterling. Bridesmaid, Olivia Vance. And bride, Elizabeth Vesper. Elizabeth Vesper. It was her. I knew it even though I'd never heard the name before. The dates, the details, they were all there. This wasn't a past event. The registry was still active. People were still buying gifts. There were comments attached to some of the items. Can't wait to celebrate with you both. Congratulations, Liz and James. James. My name is James. The world tilted. The rain outside suddenly seemed deafening. I sank back onto the couch, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the laptop. This couldn't be real. This had to be a mistake. A prank? Some elaborate joke? But the detail, the sheer overwhelming detail, the way the names sounded so official. Elizabeth Vesper? James Sterling? It was almost Shakespearean.
My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation, a way out of this nightmare. Maybe she was planning a surprise vow renewal? A really, really elaborate one? But the bridal boutique, the registry, it screamed new wedding, a second wedding. I scrolled through the guest list. Hundreds of names. Some I recognized. Her parents, a few cousins, but most were strangers. And then, tucked under a pseudonym, a name that made me freeze. David Thompson, friend of the groom. David Thompson. That was my best friend, my college roommate, the guy who stood up for me at my wedding. Why would David be involved in this? I closed the laptop, my mind a jumbled mess of anger, confusion, and a bone-deep terror. Sarah's car pulled into the driveway, the sound of the garage door opening, the familiar click of her heels on the pavement. My heart was pounding like a drum solo. I forced myself to take a deep breath, to compose myself. I had to act normal. I had to see her. She walked in, shaking the rain from her umbrella, a faint scent of perfume and damp wool clinging to her. She smiled, a tired, familiar smile. "Hey, honey, long day." "You too?" I managed, my voice sounding strained even to my own ears. She kicked off her heels, dropping her bag by the door. "Yeah, book club ran late. We got into a huge debate about the symbolism in this depressing novel." She walked into the living room, collapsing onto the armchair opposite me. Her eyes met mine, and for a second I saw it. A flicker. Something in her gaze that I'd never noticed before. A guardedness. A subtle shift. It was like looking at a stranger wearing my wife's face. "Anything interesting happen here?" she asked, her voice casual. Too casual. I swallowed. The lie lodged in my throat. "No, just, TV, rain." I watched her, trying to read her. Every twitch of her facial muscles, every shift of her weight. She looked tired, yes, but there was also a subtle tension in her shoulders, a tightness around her mouth that wasn't just exhaustion. "You seem quiet," she said, her brow furrowing slightly. "Just thinking," I replied. "Thinking about Elizabeth Vesper, about James Sterling, about David Thompson. Thinking about the utter, catastrophic collapse of my reality." "About what?" she prodded gently. I looked away, staring at the rain-streaked window. "Nothing important. Just life." She stood up, walked over to me, and placed a hand on my shoulder. Her touch was warm, familiar, and utterly alien. "Whatever it is, we can talk about it." I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her, to shake her, to demand answers. But I couldn't. Not yet. I couldn't let her see that I knew. Not until I understood. Not until I had more pieces of this monstrous puzzle. "I know," I said, forcing a weak smile and covering her hand with mine. I need some time."
She squeezed my shoulder, her smile wavering a little. "Okay, I'm going to make some tea." As she walked into the kitchen, I watched her go, my gaze fixed on her back. The way she moved, the way she held herself. It was Sarah. My Sarah. But it wasn't. Not entirely. The image of that wedding registry, the names Elizabeth Vesper and James Sterling, kept flashing behind my eyes. It felt like a dream, a nightmare I couldn't wake from. I had to know. I had to see the rest of it. I stood up, my legs unsteady, and walked back to the laptop. I needed to see what else Elizabeth Vesper had planned. I needed to find out who James Sterling really was. I opened the document again. The spreadsheet was extensive. It detailed every aspect of the wedding, the venue, the caterer, the floral arrangements, the music. It was all so meticulously planned. And then I saw a section on attire. Sarah's dress was described as a custom silk mermaid gown with intricate lace detailing, and my supposed tuxedo, a bespoke charcoal gray suit tailored to perfection. A tuxedo. I never wear tuxedos. My style is more casual. Jeans and a button-down shirt, maybe a decent blazer for something more formal. There was a note about the wedding rings, too. Platinum bands engraved with E and J, forever. Forever. The word tasted like ash in my mouth. I scrolled further down the document, my eyes scanning the names of the vendors. A wedding planner, a photographer, a DJ, and then a photographer I recognized,
Capture the moment photography. That's who shot our wedding, the same studio. Was this a deliberate choice? A twisted joke? Or was she just using what she knew, what she was comfortable with? I zoomed in on the bride's profile. Elizabeth Vesper, 32, librarian at the Sterling City Public Library. Librarian. Sarah was a graphic designer. She worked remotely for a small agency. Sterling City Public Library. I'd never heard of Sterling City. A quick Google search pulled up a town about an hour north of us, a quiet, suburban place. So not only was she planning to marry someone named James, but she was also apparently living a whole other life as a librarian in a town I'd never heard of. It was insane. Then I scrolled down to the groom's profile. James Sterling, 35, investment banker at Sterling Capital Group. Investment banker. That sounded plausible. The name Sterling kept popping up. Sterling City, Sterling Capital Group, James Sterling. It felt too neat, too coincidental. Was Sterling her chosen surname for this other life? Was she using it because of his profession, because it sounded respectable? My stomach churned again. I had to know more. I clicked on the link for the wedding planner. It led to a website, elegantly designed, featuring pictures of stunning weddings. I navigated to the couples page, and there they were, a professional photo. Sarah, smiling, radiant, her arm linked with a man I didn't recognize. He was handsome in a slick, polished way, dark hair, sharp jawline, a confident, almost smarmy smile. He was wearing a tuxedo and she was in a white dress. It wasn't the dress from the registry description, but it was undeniably a wedding photo. Underneath the picture, the caption read, "Elizabeth and James, a fairy tale beginning." My hands started to tremble again. I felt a surge of something hot and ugly rise within me. Rage, betrayal, utter, soul-crushing despair. This wasn't a secret vow renewal. This was a whole other wedding. A wedding to another man. And the gifts were still being bought. The Elizabeth Vesper wedding registry was still active. I looked at the date of the wedding photo. It was just last month. Last month. We'd gone to visit my parents that weekend. She'd said she had a freelance project deadline. A project deadline, while she was apparently getting married to James Sterling. I scrolled back to the spreadsheet, my eyes blurring with unshed tears. There was a section for the guest book where people could leave messages. I clicked on it. Page after page of heartfelt wishes. So happy for you both. Wishing you a lifetime of love and happiness. And then I saw it. A message from David Thompson. "Listen, James. So thrilled for you guys. Can't wait to celebrate. Cheers. Dave. Dave. My Dave." He was there. He knew. The sheer weight of it all threatened to crush me. 7 years of my life, of shared laughter and whispered promises, of building a future together, and all of it, apparently, a lie. A meticulously constructed facade. I felt a primal urge to destroy something, to smash the laptop, to scream until my throat was raw. But instead, I just sat there, numb, staring at the screen, the flickering cursor a tiny beacon in the vast darkness that had suddenly engulfed my world. The rain had stopped outside, but a storm raged within me, a tempest of questions with no answers, of pain with no release. And then, I saw it, a new entry on the registry. A small gift, a set of wine glasses. The comment attached read, "Congratulations, Liz. Can't wait for the honeymoon. Don't forget to pack the sunscreen. James." My blood ran cold. He was still in contact with her. They were still exchanging messages, and the registry was still open. It was happening now, or it had just happened. Either way, it was real. I closed the laptop slowly, the click echoing in the sudden silence of the house. Sarah called out from the kitchen, her voice light and airy, completely unaware of the abyss that had opened up beneath me. "Honey, tea is ready. Earl Grey, your favorite." My favorite. A part of me screamed to run, to confront her, to demand every single sordid detail. But another part, the part that was slowly succumbing to the shock, the betrayal, the sheer impossibility of it all, just wanted to disappear, to vanish into thin air. I stood up, my body feeling heavy, alien. I walked towards the kitchen, towards her, towards the woman who was both my wife and a complete stranger. The scent of Earl Grey tea filled the air, a stark contrast to the acrid taste of deceit that was now coating my tongue. I took a shaky breath, trying to steel myself, but the image of that photo, of Sarah with another man, seared into my mind, preventing any semblance of calm. I could feel her eyes on me as I entered the kitchen, her smile faltering slightly as she took in my expression. "James, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice laced with a new concern. And I standing there, holding the weight of a secret that had shattered my entire existence. Could only stare back, my mind a battlefield of guilt, confusion, and a growing, terrifying certainty. My voice, when it finally came, was a dry rasp, like leaves skittering across concrete. Nothing's wrong, Sarah. It was a lie so profound it felt like a physical blow. I watched her face, searching for any sign of recognition, any flicker of understanding that I knew. There was none. Just concern. Genuine concern, etched into the familiar lines of her forehead. It was like watching an actor play a role so perfectly, so utterly, that you forgot they were acting. But I knew. I knew the script had been ripped to shreds, and she was still performing. She set the mug down, its ceramic warmth a cruel mockery of the cold dread that had settled in my chest. You look like you've seen a ghost, James. She tilted her head. Her eyes, those deep blue eyes I used to get lost in, now felt like windows into a void. Are you sure you're okay?
You've been quiet all evening. I forced a smile, a grotesque distortion of what a smile should be. Just tired, that's all. Long day at the office. Another lie. My days had become a continuous, unending blur of deception, both hers and mine. I moved towards the counter, my hands finding the cool laminate as if for stability. My gaze drifted to the refrigerator, to the magnets holding up grocery lists and a faded photo of us at Navy Pier, laughing. It felt like a relic from another lifetime, a time before Elizabeth Vesper. "You've been tired a lot lately," she said, her voice soft, almost coaxing. She came closer, reaching out to touch my arm. Her touch was like a brand, igniting a white-hot shame. I flinched, a tiny, almost imperceptible recoil. She pulled her hand back, her smile faltering again. "What is it, James? Please, just tell me." The raw sincerity in her voice was almost unbearable. It was the sincerity of someone who had nothing to hide, and that was the most damning evidence of all. I couldn't do it. I couldn't confront her, not like this, not here, not with the smell of Earl Grey tea in the air and a photograph of our shared past smiling from the fridge. I needed more. I needed to understand the mechanics of this betrayal, the sheer audacity of it, before I could even begin to dismantle it. "It's nothing," I repeated, the words feeling hollow. "Just work stress. You know how it is." I grabbed my mug, the heat seeping into my palms, a small comfort against the internal chill. "I think I'm just going to head to bed early. Rough day tomorrow." Her face fell slightly. "Oh, okay." She watched me, her expression a mixture of concern and something I couldn't quite decipher. Disappointment? Or was it a practiced mask? "Are you sure? We can talk if you want to." "No, really," I said, forcing myself to meet her gaze. "Just need some sleep. I'll see you in the morning." I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving her standing there, the scent of tea and the unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. Upstairs, in our bedroom, the silence was deafening. It was the same bedroom we'd shared for 7 years, the same mattress, the same dresser, the same framed photos on the nightstand, but it felt different now, contaminated. Every object, every corner seemed to hold a hidden secret, a ghost of her other life. I sat on the edge of the bed, the mattress dipping under my weight, and stared at the dark wood. I needed to know about David, my best friend, the man who'd been my confidant through everything. The thought of him being complicit in this, of him knowing about Elizabeth Vesper and James Sterling and never saying a word, it was a wound deeper than any I'd imagined. I pulled out my phone, my fingers fumbling as I scrolled through my contacts. David Thompson. His name glowed on the screen. I hesitated. What could I even say? "Hey, Dave, remember that wedding you stood up in? Turns out my wife was planning another one for the same guy with the same last name as hers." It sounded insane. I put the phone down. No, I wouldn't ask him. Not yet. I needed to approach this with surgical precision, not emotional blackmail. If he was involved, I'd find out. And when I did, the fallout would be spectacular. I opened the laptop again, the glow of the screen illuminating my haunted face. I went back to the wedding registry. I'd examined the details, the vendors, the guests, but there was one section I hadn't explored thoroughly, the About Us page. It was usually a brief description of the couple, a little anecdote about how they met. I clicked on it. The text was flowery, romantic.
Elizabeth and James met in the most unexpected of circumstances, two souls drawn together by a shared love for literature and the quiet charm of Sterling City. Their journey has been one of discovery, growth, and an undeniable connection that promised a lifetime of happiness. Literature. Sarah hated reading, at least she always claimed to. She preferred visual mediums, design magazines, graphic novels. And Sterling City. She'd never mentioned Sterling City. Then I scrolled down to the pictures. There were more professional photos, not just the one wedding shot. A candid of them laughing over coffee, a posed portrait in a park, and another one, a close-up of their hands intertwined. On her left ring finger, a magnificent diamond. On his, a simple platinum band, the same style band as the one I wore. I looked at my own ring, the faint inscription inside a reminder of vows I thought were sacred. But it was the background of one particular photo that made my breath hitch. It was a shot of them standing on a beach, waves crashing behind them, the palm trees, the lush greenery, the distinctly tropical feel. It wasn't anywhere near Chicago. It looked like the Maldives, the honeymoon destination listed on the registry. My mind raced. Had they already been on their honeymoon? Had she taken time off for this other life, this wedding, and then a honeymoon, all while maintaining the facade of her life with me? The thought was sickening. I felt a cold wave wash over me, a sense of utter detachment from my own reality. I started searching online. Elizabeth Vesper. Nothing significant. It was a common enough name. But Sterling City Public Library. That yielded results. A website, photos of staff. And there, in a blurry group photo, was a woman with dark hair, wearing glasses, who bore a striking resemblance to Sarah, but with a softer, less polished look. The caption beneath read, "Our dedicated librarians." And next to her, the name, Liz Vesper. My hands trembled as I typed in, Sterling Capital Group. It was a legitimate investment firm with offices downtown. The website was sleek, professional. I searched the employee directory. James Sterling. No direct match, but there was a VP of mergers and acquisitions named James Sterling. The picture showed a man who was older than the one in the wedding photos, with salt and pepper hair and a stern expression. This James Sterling was clearly not the groom, but then I saw it, a junior associate, also named James Sterling. Younger, with dark hair, a sharper smile. The one from the beach photo. He was listed as a recent hire. This had to be him, the groom, the man Sarah had married. The pieces were falling into place, but the picture they formed was monstrous. Sarah, living a double life. Sarah, married to another man. Sarah, whose wedding registry was still active, soliciting gifts from her friends and family. And David, my David, he was there, a guest at her wedding to another James Sterling. A sudden, overwhelming wave of anger washed over me, hot and potent. It wasn't just confusion anymore. It was rage, pure, unadulterated rage at the years of lies, at the stolen intimacy, at the sheer, unmitigated betrayal. I wanted to smash something. I wanted to scream her name, Elizabeth Vesper, and watch her flinch.
So I will go ahead. Can't wait for you to see the new house in Sterling City. New house in Sterling City. My head spun. She had a new house with him? While I was here, in our house, in our suburban life, believing we were building a future together. The sheer scale of the deception was staggering. It wasn't just an affair. It was a complete parallel existence. I thought about the late meetings, the book clubs, the work deadlines, all carefully constructed alibis for this other life. I thought about the hushed phone calls she sometimes took in the other room, the way she'd sometimes freeze when her phone buzzed unexpectedly. I dismissed it all as stress, as the pressures of adult life. I felt a sudden, visceral need to see her face again, to try and reconcile the Sarah I thought I knew with the woman who had apparently orchestrated this elaborate charade. I walked out of our bedroom, down the stairs, my footsteps heavy and deliberate. The house was silent. Sarah was asleep, or pretending to be. I found myself in the living room, drawn to the bookshelf. Sarah's collection of novels. She claimed she never had time to read them, but I remembered, years ago, when we first moved in, she'd carefully arranged them, her fingers tracing the spines. I pulled one out at random. It was a well-worn paperback. I opened it, and a small, folded piece of paper slipped out. It was a photograph. Not a professional one. It looked like it had been taken with a phone. Sarah, smiling, her arm around the younger James Sterling from the beach photo. They were in what looked like a living room, a modern, minimalist space. And on a coffee table in front of them, a small, framed photo. It was a picture of me, alone, standing in front of our house. My house. My heart stopped. They had a picture of me, in their home, in their life. This wasn't just a secret wedding. This was an obsession, a twisted fascination with the life she was pretending to abandon. I stood there, the photograph clutched in my shaking hand, the implications washing over me in cold, sickening waves. They knew about me. They actively kept me in their orbit, a silent witness to their deception. This wasn't just about her cheating. This was about something far more complex, far more disturbing. I looked at Sarah's face, etched onto the page of the book. Her smile was radiant, almost triumphant. And beside her, James Sterling, his arm possessively around her. The man with my name, the man living my life. The sheer audacity of it all, the calculated cruelty, left me breathless. I dropped the photograph and the book back onto the shelf, my body rigid with a mixture of horror and a burgeoning, terrifying certainty. This was not just about Sarah anymore. This was about James Sterling. And the fact that he had a picture of me in his house, in their shared life, meant he knew who I was. He knew about James Miller. And he clearly didn't care. Or worse, he relished it. I walked back upstairs, my mind a whirlwind of dark possibilities. I needed to know more. I needed to understand why. And I knew, with a chilling certainty, that Sarah wasn't the only one with secrets. The name James Sterling was no longer just a detail on a wedding registry. It was a threat, a rival, a man who had taken my name, my life, and it seems was parading it around in front of me. I had to find out who he was, what he wanted, and why he had chosen to involve himself so intimately, so maliciously, in my life. And as I stood in the silent darkness of our bedroom, the air thick with unspoken lies, I knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning. The real nightmare was about to unfold. The silence in the bedroom was a thick, suffocating blanket. I sat on the edge of the bed, the faint moonlight painting eerie shadows across the room, and stared at the framed photo on my nightstand. Sarah and me, squinting into the sun on a beach vacation years ago, her arm around me, her smile wide and genuine. Or was it? How much of that smile had been real? How much was just another performance? The sheer exhaustion of it all, the weight of trying to reconcile the woman I thought I loved with the stranger I now knew existed, threatened to crush me. My gaze drifted to the closet. Her clothes hung neatly, a curated display of a life lived in our home. But now each dress, each blouse, felt like a costume, a piece of her elaborate disguise. She was a phantom, a ghost in her own marriage, haunting my life with her deception. The anger was still there, a simmering volcano beneath the surface, but it was mingling with a profound sadness, a sense of loss so deep it ached in my bones. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the obliteration of everything I thought I understood about us, about love, about trust. I pulled out my phone again. David. The urge to call him, to shake him, to demand an explanation for his complicity was almost overwhelming. But I couldn't. Not yet. If he knew, if he'd been at that wedding, then he was part of this web, this intricate lie. Confronting him now would be like throwing a match into dry tinder. I needed to see the whole inferno before I acted. My fingers hovered over the search bar. James Sterling. The other James Sterling. The one who had married my wife. I typed his name in, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The search results were sparse at first, mostly related to the investment firm. Then, a LinkedIn profile. James Sterling, Vice President at Sterling Capital Group. The photo showed a man in his late 40s, impeccably dressed, with a steely gaze and an air of unshakable confidence. Not the groom. This was the senior Sterling, the
Junior Sterling, the one from the wedding photos, must be his son or perhaps a relative. I dug deeper. Sterling City. It was a real place, a mid-sized city about a 4-hour drive south. A place Sarah had never mentioned. A place where they had a new house. My mind reeled. She was building a life, a tangible, brick-and-mortar life, with another man, while I was living in the ruins of our shared existence, oblivious. Then I found it. An article from a local Sterling City newspaper, dated 6 months ago. Sterling Capital Group executive James Sterling announces engagement to Elizabeth Vesper. The accompanying photo was of the senior James Sterling and a woman I didn't recognize, a mature, elegant woman with kind eyes. This was not my Sarah. This was not Liz Vesper. My breath hitched. Who was this groom? Who was this other James Sterling? I went back to the registry. The younger Sterling, the one from the beach photo. His name was listed under the bride's side, not the groom's. Groom, James Sterling. It was the same name, but the LinkedIn profile belonged to the older man. It was a common name, a popular name, and the junior Sterling was also named James Sterling. This was getting messier, more convoluted. I scrolled through the guest list on the registry again. There were hundreds of names. Sarah's family, her friends, her colleagues, and then, tucked away, almost an afterthought, a small cluster of names that made my blood run cold. David Thompson, Mark Jenkins, Emily Carter, all my friends, my closest friends, they were there, at her wedding, to another man. A strangled sound escaped my throat. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated agony. They knew. They all knew. David, my best man, my rock, had stood by and watched his best friend's wife marry another man.
The betrayal wasn't just Sarah's anymore. It was a conspiracy, a suffocating, all-encompassing lie that extended to the people I trusted most in the world. I felt a sudden, overwhelming urge to vomit. The room spun. The carefully constructed reality I inhabited had shattered into a million razor-sharp shards, and I was drowning in the debris. I stumbled to the bathroom, my hands shaking as I gripped the sink, my reflection staring back at me, a gaunt, hollow-eyed stranger. I had to go to Sterling City. I had to confront them. I couldn't stand this suspense, this gnawing uncertainty for another second. I needed to see her face, to see the man she had chosen, to understand the depth of this depravity. The drive was a blur of adrenaline and despair, the miles stretched out, each one a taunt, a reminder of how far Sarah had gone to build this other life. I replayed every conversation, every argument, every tender moment, searching for clues I had missed, for warning signs I had ignored. Had I been so blinded by love, by familiarity, that I couldn't see the truth staring me in the face? Sterling City was a charming, tree-lined town, the kind of place that exuded an air of quiet prosperity. I parked a few blocks away from the address I'd found for Elizabeth Vesper's new house. It was a beautiful, modern home with clean lines and large windows nestled amongst manicured gardens. It looked like something out of an architectural magazine, a stark contrast to our comfortable, lived-in suburban house. My heart hammered against my ribs as I walked up the driveway. I felt like an intruder, a trespasser in a life that was stolen from me. I reached for the doorbell, my hand trembling, but then I stopped. What was I going to say? Hi, I'm James Sterling, and apparently you're married to my wife, who is also named Elizabeth Vesper and recently married another James Sterling. It sounded like a bad joke. I retreated to the street, my mind racing. I couldn't just knock. I needed proof, solid, undeniable proof. I took out my phone and began to circle the house, looking for an angle, a way to see inside. The large windows were a liability for them, a blessing for me. I found a spot behind a large oak tree, its branches offering a partial screen. I could see into the living room. It was exactly as I'd seen in the photograph from the book. Sleek, minimalist, expensive. And on a prominent shelf, amidst art books and decorative objects, was the framed photo of me, standing in front of my house. My house. A chill went down my spine. They had kept it. They had displayed it. It wasn't just about taking my name. It was about mocking me, about flaunting their stolen identity. Then I saw her. Sarah. She was standing by the window, talking on her phone, her back to me. She looked happy, relaxed,
the picture of contentment. My Sarah, or a version of her I had never known. She was wearing a soft, flowing dress, and her hair was styled differently, softer, less controlled. But it was unmistakably her. My breath caught in my throat. A man walked into the room, his arm wrapping around her waist. He was tall, with dark, slicked-back hair and a sharp, angular face. He leaned in and kissed her cheek. The groom. The other James Sterling. He looked ordinary. Not particularly remarkable, but with an air of quiet possession, as if he owned everything in this house, including Sarah. My hands clenched in the fists. The sight of them together, so at ease, so intimate, was a physical blow. The anger flared hot and sharp, eclipsing the sadness. This wasn't just a mistake, a moment of weakness. This was a deliberate, sustained act of deception, a life built on lies. I needed to know. I needed to see his face clearly. I edged closer, trying to get a better view through the trees. He turned, and for a fleeting moment, his profile was clear. It wasn't the younger James Sterling from the wedding photos. It was someone else entirely, someone I'd never seen before. My mind reeled. Was there a third James Sterling? Or had the registry been a deliberate misdirection? The younger James Sterling was listed as a junior associate at Sterling Capital. The older James Sterling was a VP. Who was this man? The one who was now Sarah's husband? Just then, Sarah turned, her gaze sweeping across the lawn. For a terrifying second, our eyes met. Or at least I thought they did. She paused, her expression shifting, a flicker of something unreadable crossing her face. Confusion, recognition, or just a fleeting glance at a stranger loitering on her street. She then turned back to the man, saying something that made him laugh, and they walked further into the house, disappearing from my view. I sank back against the tree, my legs weak. I had seen her. I had seen him. But the confusion was worse than the certainty. The name, James Sterling, was a cipher. The registry was a sham. Who was this man, and why was Sarah living this life with this man, using this name? I pulled out my phone again, my fingers trembling. I typed Elizabeth Vesper Sterling City into the search bar. This time, a different set of results appeared. A wedding announcement in a local Sterling City social magazine. Elizabeth Vesper, daughter of prominent local philanthropists, married to James Sterling. The photo showed the same man I had just seen entering the house. He looked younger in this photo, but unmistakably him. And the date of the wedding, 2 years ago. 2 years. The world tilted. 2 years. She had been married to this man for 2 years, while I had been here, building a life with her, believing we were a couple, a unit, a team. The sheer scale of the deception was a physical weight in my chest. It wasn't a recent affair. It was a fully formed, established marriage. My mind raced, grasping for any thread of logic. She had a husband who was not me, and she was living a lie with me, a lie that had spanned 2 years. Why? What twisted game was this? Was she living a double life, 2 marriages, 2 husbands, or was this all a way to, what? To manipulate me, to control me. I looked back at the beautiful house, the symbol of her other life. The framed photo of me on the shelf felt like a cruel taunt, a trophy from a conquest. She had taken my name, my identity, and was living it out with another man. And my friends were complicit. They had attended her wedding. They had known. The anger began to transform, to morph into something colder, more calculating. This wasn't just about heartbreak. This was about a fundamental violation of reality. My reality, and the people who had enabled it. I thought of David's hesitant smile the last time I'd seen him, the way he'd quickly changed the subject when I'd asked about Sarah's recent stress, the forced enthusiasm in Mark's voice when he talked about a shared memory of Sarah and me. They weren't just passive witnesses. They were active participants. I had to go home. I had to confront Sarah. I couldn't let this lie fester any longer. I got into my car, the engine turning over with a roar that felt like my own internal turmoil. The drive back felt even longer, the silence in the car filled with the cacophony of my own thoughts. I pulled into our driveway,
the house looking familiar yet alien. It was a stage set for a play I was no longer a part of. I walked inside, the familiar scent of lemon polish and old books doing nothing to soothe my frayed nerves.
Sarah was in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared dinner. She turned as I entered, her smile bright, her eyes wide with feigned innocence. "Hey, you're back early," she said, her voice light. "Long day?" I stood there, watching her, the woman I had loved, the woman who had systematically dismantled my life. I saw the carefully crafted performance, the practiced warmth, and for the first time, I felt nothing but a chilling detachment. "Where were you today, Sarah?" My voice was low, even, devoid of emotion. Her smile faltered slightly. "I told you I had a book club meeting downtown. Why?" I walked towards her, each step deliberate. Her eyes widened, a flicker of apprehension crossing her face. The performance was cracking. "I drove down to Sterling City today, Sarah." Her hand flew to her mouth, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. The humming stopped. The warmth drained from her face, replaced by a stark, naked fear. You went to Sterling City?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Yes," I said, my gaze locked on hers. "I went to your house, the one you bought with your husband, James Sterling, the one you married 2 years ago." The air crackled with the unspoken truth. Her face paled, her body rigid. She didn't deny it. She couldn't. The carefully constructed facade had crumbled, leaving only the wreckage of her lies. "James, I can explain." Her voice was a mere breath, barely audible. "Can you?" I asked, the coldness in my voice cutting through the silence. "Can you explain why you've been living a double life? Can you explain why my friends were at your wedding? Can you explain why you kept a picture of me in your house with him?" Tears welled up in her eyes, spilling down her cheeks. It's complicated, James." "Complicated?" I laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "You're married to another man, Sarah. That's not complicated. That's betrayal. That's a lie. That's everything you promised you'd never be." She sank onto a kitchen chair, her body racked with sobs. "I never meant for any of this to happen. It got out of hand." "Out of hand?" I repeated, the rage finally bubbling to the surface, a consuming inferno. "You orchestrated this, Sarah. You built this other life, brick by brick, lie by lie, and you let me live in ignorance. You let me love you. You let me believe we had a future, all while you were building a life with someone else." "I was trapped, James," she cried, her voice thick with tears. He has influence. He made promises. And then David got involved. He said it was the only way to protect you." David, my friend, the architect of my own destruction, disguised as protection. It was too much. The intricate web of deceit, the layers of manipulation, all converging on me. "Protect me?" I scoffed, the word tasting like ash. "By letting me be a fool? By letting me waste my life with a woman who was already married? By letting you build a life with another man while I was here in the dark?" I walked out of the kitchen, unable to bear her sobs, her pathetic attempts at justification. I went to our bedroom, the room that had once been our sanctuary, now a tomb of broken promises. I stood in the center of the room, the silence pressing in on me. I looked at the framed photo on the nightstand, Sarah smiling, her arm around me. A lie, a perfectly executed, devastating lie. I picked up the photo. Her smile seemed to mock me. I felt a surge of pure, unadulterated anger, a need to obliterate the memory, the symbol of her deception. I raised my hand and threw the photo against the wall. The glass shattered, fragments scattering across the floor. The image of Sarah was cracked, broken, just like our life together. I sank onto the floor, surrounded by the debris of our shattered reality. The anger had subsided, leaving behind a hollow ache, a profound emptiness. There was no catharsis, no resolution, only the cold, hard truth. Sarah was married to another man. My friends had betrayed me. My life had been a carefully constructed illusion. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if I could ever trust anyone again. But as I sat there, amidst the broken glass and the silent accusations, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. The man I thought I was, the man who believed in love, in loyalty, in truth, was gone. And in his place was someone new, someone forged in the fires of betrayal, someone who would have to find a way to navigate a world where nothing was as it seemed. The last vestiges of hope, of naive trust, had been ground into dust. The exhale that escaped my lips was not one of relief, but of a profound, irrevocable surrender.
The old life was over, and the new one, whatever it held, had just begun.